So Planet Earth 2 Episode 2 is about mountains. So this episode opens up with some very good footage of snow leopards. Now I'll touch on snow leopards later in the video because they become quite a big part of the episode. And from there we move on to the Middle East, I think, where we see Nubian ibex. Now the Nubian ibex sequence basically follows some kid ibex as they are living in the mountains, on the rock faces, on the cliffs. And yeah, then we see them getting hunted by a fox. Now, we have seen that sequence before in Life, back in 2009. Well, the sequence in Planet Earth 2 is definitely filmed better. I think I found the sequence in Life more memorable. I don't know how, I just did. Maybe it's because of the first time I saw it, but I don't know. Overall, that sequence is fine. It's a nice little, chase scene, and it ends kind of funny with the fox doesn't get in his way and he gets pecked at by some ravens. But it's alright, and then we see them go down to the waterhole to feed. And overall, that's probably one of the weaker parts of the episode, though it is still fine. From there we move on to the Alps, where we see golden eagles. Now this sequence is absolutely gorgeously shot, it looks amazing. The sequences of the eagles just flying through the mountains, especially with the snowy backdrop, is just amazing, spectacular. The sequence where we film it from the eagle's perspective, some of that is from suction cameras because we see the eagle's head in the shot, and sometimes it's from a glider as we see in the making of sequence, which is fine. No, but that's a really good sequence. Then we see the eagle that we're following, this female, finds this fox carcass, and she's pecking at it, and all these other eagles come and try and fight her for it, and it's a really good sequence again. You see the eagles fighting, it's great. The lighting's really good, it just looks almost mystical, like something out of Narnia or something. It looks really well, it's really well shot. It's just a great sequence. Anytime you see eagles, they're just impressive animals. So seeing them on screen at all, in any sequence, regardless what they're doing, is always pretty great for me. But no, really good part of the episode for me. Then we see the bears in the Rocky Mountains, so we see bears waking up. We also see some avalanches before then, and we see the bears having to cope with that, having to just kind of watch what they're doing as they're leaving their dens after the avalanches hit, because it's not a safe place to be. And it's kind of tense, and then from it being tense, we then move on to them going further down the mountain where it's no longer snowy, and they are rubbing themselves against trees to let other bears know that they're in the area. And it's absolutely great. It's a really good, funny sequence, weirdly. I think that's helped by the music. The music is very good. It's almost reminds me of the Pied Piper scene in Shrek Forever After. It's like the flutes go and there's some drums in the background. It's very good. I mean, bears seem to lend themselves to funny sequences anyway, for some reason, even though they're, terrifying in real life. But no, it's a really good sequence. Very funny stuff. It's funny that it cuts to the bears, the bear cubs trying to, mimic the adults, and the music just kind of cuts, and it bounces back to the usual kind of drum and flute part when there's back to the adults. Yeah, it's just really good. I don't know why. It's not even them doing anything particularly memorable. It's just the music really helps the scene. I saw Planet Earth 2 back in the Hydro concert a couple of years ago, and that was one of the sequences they played the music to, and it's really good. It's really memorable. Don't know why. Just really good stuff. From there we move on to another part of the Rocky Mountains where we see bobcats in the winter trying to basically eke out a living. We see them catching mice, and it's really good when it's like going on the boulders to avoid making sound by crunching in the snow. It's really good. I like how the sound just cuts as well when the bobcats leaping from boulder to boulder. It's really good. Another thing I liked about that sequence, you see a lot of wildlife in North America around a sort of waterhole, around a lake basically. You see coyotes, otters, geese, herons, swans, ducks. I don't know why, it's just, I'm so used to seeing like waterholes in the African savannah. It's just nice to see it in another part of the world. I don't know why, I just like that. It's an aspect, a lot of things in this episode I'm like, I like that. And I don't really know why, but that's one of those bits. But we see it basically trying to catch fish. It clearly is out of its element. It's also quite funny when it tries to catch something and it misses, and all these ducks are just quacking at it. Now realistically the ducks are just letting the bobcat know that it's there, but if you're anthropomorphising it, it looks like they're laughing at it, and it is quite funny. I did have a chuckle when they were doing it. I did like it. But then it catches a squirrel in a tree, which is a bit more, in its element. So that was a good sequence. Then we move on to the mountains in Kenya, where we see plants that I can't remember the name of. We see them at night, they open up and let moisture in or something, and then close in the day. And yeah, it's good, I think. It's not the most memorable part of the episode for me, to be honest, but it's fine. And from there we move on to the Andes, where we see flamingos. Flamingos are living on the top of the mountains, basically, in these lakes, which are pretty inhospitable. No one else lives there. You just kind of see them surviving there, really. And there's this whole part where they're walking around in this big cluster of them. It's just them walking around, just going And it's funny again. The music helps there lend that humorous comedic vibe to it. But again, we don't really know why they do it. It's probably got something to do with mating, when they seem to pair up after they're done. There's no real explanation beyond that given, and we don't really see them doing anything like amazing after that. But it's one of those sequences where the footage and the music coming together really makes it. Like, I think that's something to say in this episode as a whole, is the music in this episode really does help make the sequences sometimes. But from there we start talking about environmental stuff. Now this was before it became popular to talk about environmental messages in these kind of programs. Comparing it to more recent programs like Planet Earth 3 or Seven Worlds, One Planet or Our Planet, it does feel a bit like, oh, it's in there. But it does a good job at tackling it. It shows you footage of the animals we've seen, like the eagles in the Alps, the bears in the Rockies, and just kind of talks about how the problems that are facing those particular areas. And it's a quite good sequence. It's kind of slotted in there. It's not right at the end of the episode, but it's nice to talk about it. I appreciate it that it's there, to be honest. Again, this was before it was like the done thing to every episode had to have an environmental message. It's probably one of the last series that they did to not have that kind of focus. And from there we move on to the snow leopard sequence in the Himalayas. So this is probably the best snow leopard sequence I've ever seen. They were great in Planet Earth 1, but I think this might have the edge over it. For one, it's filmed amazing. You get great shots from the camera traps of the snow leopards just walking through the mountains. And they really go deep into their lives. Like this is easily the longest part of this episode. We spend quite a lot of time with this mother snow leopard and her cub, and it talks a lot about their behaviour, like not just about their behaviour, but their lifestyle, like how there's some few snow leopards out there that are just kind of, they never see each other and they're just on the edge of their territories. They make these scent marks that are like a personalised signature for each snow leopard to let everyone know the extent of their territories and where everyone is. It just felt really intimate, to be honest. I don't think it's the most intimate look into a snow leopard or many animals' lives I think we've had in any of these series. More so than even shows like Dynasties, which that was the focus. I think it was did a really good job of that, and yeah, I was really interested throughout it. And then we see the mother snow leopard and her cub. There's a bit of danger there because the mother's coming to heat again, so there's some males after them. Obviously wanting to mate, and obviously the cub's there, so that could have a problem. The cub might die if the males want to kill them to boost their own offspring's chance of survival. Now this series was a little bit controversial at the time, namely when a parent wrote in and complained about the violence of this sequence, and said that it portrayed rape. Overall, I think that might be a case of anthropomorphising. I don't think that's necessarily the best thing to do when you're discussing animal behaviour. I think you have to kind of keep that separate. So for me, while the narration maybe does suggest that an element of that, whether that was intentional or not by the BBC, probably wasn't. I think you kind of have to look at it being a bit separate. But I think the BBC did kind of open themselves up to that, because up to this point every series had aired at 9 PM. This was the first series where they brought the time back at 8 PM to realistically encourage a younger audience, and I don't think that's a bad thing. They even received complaints from the previous episodes with the iguanas and the racer snakes being too scary for kids, which again, I think this series is actually quite violent overall. There's a lot of sequences in here that are a bit disturbing or quite upsetting, I think, more so than a lot of later series, because I think you compare this series to a lot of more recent series where everything is a bit more fluffy. I think that's probably an element of appealing to younger audiences. Regardless of what the whole sequence represents, you totally get behind that snow leopard mother and her cub. You really want them to survive. And at the end of the episode, they make it out like they don't go, but they were never seen again. Until now. They're out in the mountains, they're both living separately now, your cubs become independent. It's a really nice way of ending that episode, I think. So yeah, really good way of ending it. And then we see the making of sequence, which is about the Golden Eagles. It's weird looking at the two teams, the guys that were filming the eagles fighting over the kill. That was really good. But the best part was the guys that were paragliding off the mountains to imitate the eagle eye view that we have in the series. It kind of takes a little bit of magic away from the sequence, I think, just because, well, it's not an actual eagle that's in the shot. You can kind of pretend. They don't really give you that option anymore, but it's still a really good sequence, and even especially with the guys, like, the cameraman strapped in with them and they're going down together, like in tandem. It's really funny, to be honest. I really liked it. Yeah, it was a pretty good sequence. Yeah, I really liked it. Overall, this episode is really good. It's definitely better than the first one, the Islands episode. I think the highlight is the snow leopards. It's just a really good look at the life of an animal. I don't think we get anything as intimate as that, regardless of the controversy around it. I think the eagles is also are also great. The bears were really funny. The flamingos I quite liked as well. Overall, this episode was really good. So, what did you think of this episode? What was your favourite part of the episode? Did you like the same stuff I liked? Did you think this was better than the last episode? How does it rank in this series for you? And yeah, as ever, if you like this video, feel free to like, comment and subscribe. Again, as ever, you don't need to. It's entirely up to you. But yeah, I'll be doing the Jungles episode next week, and see you then. Goodbye.